Hi everyone, welcome to our history lesson for today. We're carrying on looking at the ancient Mayans, and today we're going to be focusing on religion. And we're going to be looking at religion in the time of the ancient Mayans and how that compares to today. So, just before we start looking at the ancient Mayans' religion, what we need to think about is how important do you think religion is in life right now? Do you think it's more or less important than it was in the past? Okay, now for some of you, religion may be very important. You might go to a church or a mosque or wherever it is you might go to pray every week or more than once a week. You may have parents that are very religious, but equally now, quite a lot of people don't go to any form of place of worship and they don't really have any religion that they necessarily believe in. Now, just to be talking about that for a second, so if we have a look here, we've got different types of beliefs. Okay, so if you believe that there is no religion and that it isn't true or isn't real, you would say that you are an atheist. That is to say that you don't believe in it. If you are somewhere in the middle, i.e. you're not sure, you would say you are agnostic. Now, agnostic doesn't mean you don't believe, but it doesn't mean you believe either. You're somewhere in the middle. You're open to the possibility, but you don't believe one way or the other. And then, of course, you have people that are religious. Okay? Now, you might have people that are devout, that means they are very religious, okay? Or you might have people that believe in their faith and just attend regularly, okay? Now, the reason I talk about that is because what we need to think about is now people tend to sit somewhere. If you imagine this as a spectrum, sort of from one place to another, people tend to sit all over it. Okay, so you kind of get a mixture. You get some people that are very religious, you get some people that are agnostic, you get some people that are atheist. Okay, so that is now. In the past, what do you think? So if I drew the same diagram and I have atheist at the top, agnostic and religious at the bottom, where do you think most people would have sat in the past? Well, in the past, religion was incredibly important, and most people would have been here. It was almost unheard of to be atheist, okay, if you didn't believe in the religion that the place you lived in believed in. That could be considered a crime. Now we have the freedom of choice, but in the past you pretty much had to believe in it, and throughout history people have been killed for believing in the religion that isn't believed in the place that they live, and there's been many wars over different religions. Now, looking at today, we're looking at religion in the ancient Mayan times. And you may have already let me move me over here. You may have already guessed, being in the past and from what I've said, that religion was incredibly important. So it was very important. It affected absolutely everything they did. It completely controlled their lives. Okay, their life revolved around the religion. They believed in lots of different nature gods who ruled people's lives and decisions. Think about Christianity. Okay, you have one God who, if you believe in Christianity, is responsible for everything. Okay, in different religions, you may have more than one God, but there tends to only be a few at most. In the Mayan religion, there's a God for everything. There are loads and loads and loads of gods. Okay, and there are they are for different parts of nature. So there's the gods of maize. Now, maize is a crop that was grown in the ancient Mayan times. There's a god just for maize. It was really important to them, however, and it was sort of their staple food. It's what they lived on. There was a god of the sun, a god of fire. This is one of the gods. This is a name I'm going to have fun pronouncing, called Kinich Ahau. That's his name now. Whether it is his name or not, that is his name. Oh, I'm going to have to keep moving my camera. There are many, many Mayan gods. When researchers first started studying the Maya, they labelled the gods using the alphabet because there were so many of them. So they had god A, B, C, etc. They didn't know. But as they discovered more, and as they looked at paintings and pottery, and like we looked at when we looked at archaeologists, they discover through what the Mayans made and what they painted and what they drew, they learned some of the names because the Mayans had their own text and they could decode that text to work out what the gods were called. Okay, so before Mayan hieroglyphs, so like the Egyptians, the Mayans had hieroglyphs, which I think we've spoken about before, and that's basically where you have symbols or pictures that represent words. Okay, now before they were able to decipher those and actually work out what they meant, no one knew what the names of the gods were. So they labelled them with the letters of the alphabet, like I just said. That was the only way of being able to identify them. However, once the hieroglyphs had been translated, they were able to name the gods, as they were called by the Mayans. So the same names the Mayans called them, we were then able to work out what they were. And we've got some of the different gods here. This god here, identified as Shak, the god of rain. God D, or Itzamna, was the god of agriculture, so that's like farming and planting, and education. Okay, so Mayan lives revolved around religion, as I've already said. They had many special ceremonies and rituals to honour the gods and ask for blessings. People gave gifts to the gods, such as flowers, maize, or gold, so they donated things to them as a sign of respect and in the hope that the gods would be favourable towards them. And, for example, if it was the god of maize, which was the crop, if they gave donations to the god of maize, they were hoping that their crop that year would be really good. Religious ceremonies took place in the temples. Now, those we looked at when we saw the ruins that were found, and they took place. Offerings were thrown into holy water holes called cenotes. Okay, now they made these big temples to honour the gods, to show them how important they were to them. Now, as well as giving them gifts, the Maya believed that they had to offer blood sacrifices to the gods. They believed that if they didn't, the sun wouldn't rise, and the world would end. So basically, if they didn't kill people for the gods, the sun wouldn't rise. But it wasn't just people. Blood sacrifices could be given in many ways. Rulers, for example, would pull spiky ropes through their tongues to draw blood. Lovely. So it didn't have to be death. It could just be a, bit of blood from your tongue. Or fingernails would be pulled from slaves or captives. Horrible. This picture shows King Shield Jaguar, that's a great name, holding a torch while his wife draws a barbed cord through his tongue. Horrible. Luckily we don't do that now. Okay, now we've got this pot here, and the pot shows someone being sacrificed in a religious ceremony. He's having his heart pulled out. History is not always friendly. It can be quite brutal. And it shows you how things have changed. So they did all sorts of things for sacrificing because they believed, they didn't do it to be cruel, they were doing it because they believed it would please the gods. And that may seem quite strange to us now, but that's because in the past, religion and gods were so important to these people. It was all they believed in. Now, another way to offer blood wasn't just to give a little bit of blood, they might sacrifice them, actually kill them. Men, women, and children could all be sacrificed. No one was exempt. Unless you were the king, because then you were considered too important. Human sacrifices were often slaves or captives from other city-states. So they were the first to go. Basically, as we looked at last week when we looked at the different types of people in the Mayan society, if you were born a slave, your life sucked. Especially because you'd probably then get sacrificed. I'm going to have to move me again. Up I go. Okay. Now, the Mayans believed in an afterlife, so a bit like how the Christian religion believes in heaven and hell, and lots of religions believe in an afterlife of sorts, so did the Mayans. They believed that there was a heaven and an underworld. Again, very similar. People who were sacrificed to the gods went straight to heaven, is what they believed, to live with the gods instead of going to the underworld. So actually, some people believed being sacrificed was a good thing. Believe it or not, because it meant for them that they believed they were going to go to heaven. Everyone else, including the rulers and the kings, had to journey through the underworld, which was a dark and scary place, to get to heaven, is what they believed. So basically, if you were sacrificed, you got a free pass straight to heaven. Don't stop at go, off your pop. If you're anyone else, when you die, you had to go through the underworld, and you had to sort of make your journey and hope you got to heaven. Not everyone was able to complete the journey, is what they believed. So as you can see, for some people, they thought that being sacrificed actually was a pretty good thing. Now, other than those who were sacrificed, the only other people who went straight to paradise, they believed, were women who died in childbirth, those who died in battle, so warriors that died in battle, and those who died playing a religious ball game called Pocatok. Yes, that there was a ball game, a bit like football, called Pocatok, and you could die in it. And if you died in it, you went straight to heaven. You don't see that happening in the Premier League, do you? Although the way some of them dive on the floor, you'd think they were dead. Right, moving over here. Now, we're going to have a look at what's called the Mayan creation story. Now, every religion has a creation story, i.e. how they believe the earth came to be. Okay, now, the Christian creation story looks at how God created the world. Okay, the Mayan creation story is a little bit different, and I'm going to sort of read it to you now. In the beginning of the world, there were only two gods. These gods, oh, here we go, I'm going to have to pronounce this. These gods were called Guacamole and Tapas. Now, I had some interesting names last year when I taught this to remember these, so I'm going to share them with you. We have Guacamole and Tapas. Okay? So from now on, I apologise for being disrespectful to the Mayan religion. They are called Guacamole and Tapas, because I can actually pronounce that. And they glittered with blue and green feathers. The two gods decided that they would create the earth. They thought of the earth, and it was created. Thought of it, done. There it was. They thought of the trees, mountains, valleys and cliffs, and they were created. Done. They thought of the grass, the flowers, the fields and the forests, and would you believe it, they were created too. When they created the world, they looked to each other and they said, look at this amazing world we've made. Pat yourself on the shoulder. We need beings who will take care of the earth and who will praise us for what we've created. Basically, they wanted people that would look and go, thank you so much for this. So they made animals. They made jaguars, panthers, snakes and deer. They made dogs, turkeys, parrots, fish and all the other animals that are in the world today. Just like that. But the animals, they couldn't praise Guacamole and Tapas. They could only bark or growl or bleat. Wasn't very good for the gods. They tried as hard as they could, but the meows and the twitters and the roars became so loud that the gods told them to stop. What a racket! We need better beings who will be able to say our names and praise us instead of just making noise, they said. So they thought to themselves, let's make people. They decided to make the people out of mud to start with. But they were a bit weak. They couldn't stand up and they soon crumbled and died. They tried again, this time using wood and rushes to make people, but these people had nothing in their minds or hearts. They soon forgot to worship the gods and were destroyed by a great flood. Whoops. The few people who survived became the monkeys who live in the trees. Guacamole and Tapas left them there as warnings of what happened when the gods are not worshipped. One day, the animals brought the gods a sack of white maize. The gods ground this into a paste and made 4 men. The 4 men immediately started praising Guacamole and Tapas. The gods knew that these men had hearts full of emotion and heads full of questions. They were so pleased with the men that they created 4 women for the men, and this is how the human race began. So if you're ever not sure, you were made from crops, you were made from maize, it was ground into paste, and then there you were. Hey, the people believed in it. How is it similar or different to the Christian creation story? Okay, so think about the Christian creation story, which is where God made the world into existence. Okay, well, if we look at some of the similarities, both of them believed that it just sort of happened, that the earth was sort of made. Okay, obviously the differences mainly are on how humans came to be. There's some big differences going on there, but actually the whole concept of it being created, which is why it's called a creation story, is quite similar. I'm going to show you a quick video, which, in fact, I'm going to put this in the link onto Seesaw for you, so you can have a watch of it in your own time. I'd really recommend you watching it. It's only 2 minutes long, but it recaps a lot of what I've said, and it's quite good. Okay, so your task is going to be on Seesaw today. Now, I've attached an information sheet, which gives you all of the bits I've been wittering on about, and it's also giving you your activity sheet, which is basically to use the information sheet to fill in the boxes. Now, the boxes are quite big, so you should be able to submit your answers using Seesaw without any problems. Okay? Thank you very much for listening and learning about the Mayan religion, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Goodbye.